leadership is something you can never finish. It's testing my ability to lead, and I like that. I'll figure it out. Discipline's a friend. It takes a while to learn what discipline really is. I think discipline starts with self-trust. A leader's behavior sets the tone for the organization. Like it or not, whether people want to believe that or not, it's true. The CEO or the founder, they set the tone. Everyone in that organization wants a reason to trust the person running the company. They found out that only 10% of leaders follow company values. War's probably the most imperfect type of operation. No matter how many have been fought, no matter how much you study it, it's never perfect. There's just so many variables. The pressure can be, ungodly.
Unveil the art of resilient leadership with a man who has walked the path of valor and emerged to lead with strength and integrity.
The thing about it is we can't continuously look at the top of the mountain and say, man, I want to be there, I want to be there, I want to be there. No, we've got to break that big goal down into maybe 15 sub goals, and we got to hit one at a time. Then each day we wake up, we got to hit that one goal in front of us.
Why don't we train people to be leaders? This question is at the heart of this episode with Bobby Harrington, a seasoned leader with a 34-year journey through sports, martial arts, the military, private business, and a Fortune 100 oil and gas company. Founding the Rubicon Course of Action, Bobby has dedicated himself to transfer his leadership insights to new senior leaders, executives, and business owners. During our chat, Bobby explores the critical roles of self-trust and self-belief in leadership. Drawing from his vast experiences, he shares how these qualities forge strong leaders. Expect to learn about the iterative process of building leadership confidence, akin to constructing a house, one brick at a time. Join me as Bobby unravels the complexities of leadership, emphasizing the importance of commitment, discipline, and resilience in this ever-evolving journey.
I've passed the point of, trying to be a perfect leader. I can cope with failure, and it's like all that came together and I retired, like the last 5 years of my career is when most of everything, like it just came together like that, after I, had that little setback and transformation, and now I'm retired. But while I don't have a large team now, it's only myself. I'm a company of one, and I have some adjunct instructors. But I'm excited to train leaders, one by one. Because there's a deficit of leadership across the world, across government, business, spiritual, all that. But we can either complain about it or we can do something about it. So that's where, in my retirement or semi-retirement, I want to fill that gap.
Absolutely, mate. Well, coming from your background, you're obviously a man of action. How about just you give a little bit of insight into this journey you've had from, as I said, from battlefield to boardroom now?
Yeah. So, I grew up in South Louisiana, and a lot of folks played sports, and I started playing football. It's kind of like all the other guys did. And I went to college, played football for a year, and decided that really wasn't going to be for me. It wasn't a lot of distance for me in that. So I always wanted to serve. So I joined the United States Marine Corps. And the reason I did that is because my father was a World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam veteran. And I always respected him for his service and sacrifice. And I said, okay, I really don't want to go into government, but let me try the military. And boy, glad I did. And I was, after growing up with my dad and, my mom, she's Eastern European descent from Yugoslavia, and, come from really tough people. So she had high standards, made us work hard. And I was well prepared for the Marine Corps. And, that's where I got my first introduction to a framework of leadership, right? Because the Marine Corps teaches leadership very specifically, and they teach it the same to all ranks. And I believe that's what makes the Marine Corps, maybe a little unique. Now, after the Marine Corps, I started a career in oil and gas and became a commercial diver. Then I went on to inspection services and ended up working for Chevron after owning a company for a brief period, and spent a couple decades with Chevron, working across the world in China and Africa, different places. And yeah, it's been a long journey, but it's been a very fruitful one. And 34 years went by, just like that,
In the blink of an eye, mate. And you
in the
mentioned
blink of an
earlier,
eye.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier how you're just sort of so excited and passionate, and you're sort of the semi-retirement at what you're doing now. But what makes you so passionate and inspired and excited around this journey you're on now?
Well, leadership is something you can never finish, right? So it's not that you can get to one point and say, okay, I'm done, I've arrived. There's always something new to learn. Every situation, every team, every assignment I had required something different of me as a leader. And now in semi-retirement, there are different things required of me now. Learning the online marketing and being on podcasts and trying to run live events and stuff like that, trying to acquire coaching clients. That's a real big challenge for me right now. But it's testing my ability to lead, and I like that. I'll figure it out.
I'm just interested too in the background. You've got a fantastic background in the Stronger You coaching program. Tell us where this Stronger You emanates from.
Well, we always have room for growth. Um, Kind of equated to the gym. It can always get a little stronger. You know, so the same applies to leadership. There's always something different to learn. There's always traits, attributes, values to cultivate. We're never done with those. Those are perishable. If we don't work on those each day, those erode. So the Stronger You program was to help people work on those things. And specifically, there's a gap in leadership training, leadership development, however you want to say that. Again, I'll go back to my time in the Marine Corps. I was fortunate. I was taught leadership in some type of framework. Well, a lot of people who leave high school and go to university or college, they have zero leadership training. Now, they may be somewhat predispositioned for leadership, right? They might have some charisma, that might have a hard work ethic. But, it really takes putting together a framework and kind of understanding, what it's all about, with people and processes and, you know, uh, missions and business plans. And Stronger You solves that problem, right? We start out teaching people character. We help them identify their values, and we go on to you know, the larger things in the leadership context.
Tell us a bit more about the value side of things, because I know that in some of the research and some of the information you submitted to come on as a guest, that I often talk about culture as a reflection of leadership, and you're basically saying that you talk about how the sort of character and the personal attributes and the values of the leader impacts that culture. Do you want to sort of share a bit more about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a leader's behavior sets the tone for the organization. Like it or not, whether people want to believe that or not, it's true. The CEO or the founder, they set the tone. Everyone in that organization wants a reason to trust the person running the company. So goes the leader behavior, so goes the organization and culture. And, I say that with confidence because I've experienced it across the military, sports, martial arts, private business, big corporation like Chevron. The single factor that drives culture is how the senior leader treats people, right? And that goes back to the value of how you view people. If he or she is, an amicable person and approachable, the culture will nominally be that way, right? You've always got your outliers and people that want to misbehave, but if there's a standard set and it's enforced and people live it, I mean, if people are really living, you don't have to enforce it because others will follow suit. Also, people need to look at the decisions and intent, that leaders make. What decisions are made at the highest levels, and who does that decision serve? Right? Does it serve that senior leader? Does it serve a certain department in the organization? Um, does Who does that serve, or the whole of the organization? Secondly, I think intent is really important to try to identify because it's critical and that reveals the character of a leader. So is that leader making decisions with the intent to improve, individuals in his span of control are making decisions for the whole of the organization, or are the decisions self-serving? That's kind of the heart of the matter. But you know, values are another aspect of shaping the culture of an organization. We see the posters and the websites plastered everywhere with, it says our values or what we believe in, but, you know, who lives those values? What leaders are living and demonstrating those values on a day to day basis? There was a study done and presented at the annual Internal Management Consultants Conference in 2015, and they found out that only 10% of leaders follow company values. So how does that work for the remainder of the company? Who else is following values if the senior leaders aren't? And so again, sort of wrap that up. People will nominally do what their leaders do.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you thought much about the root of that problem, that sort of only 10% of leaders are actually following company values or aligned with company values?
Yeah, so it's a slippery slope to answer that, but I'll give it a go. You know, eh, eh, all senior leaders have their motivations, and they can either be self-serving or they can serve the organization to the best of their ability, and that's how it will fall out. But you find a lot of folks that try to protect themselves and don't look out for others. Fear of failure. At the highest levels is real. I know in the company I was in, they're fast movers. They move around every 18, 24 months, and if they go to a business unit and stink it up, well, they might not get another chance. So what will they do to cut corners? Or what will they do to to serve people in the organization? So I mean, it can go either way. But I think fear of judgment probably, and probably self-preservation probably has a little bit to do with it. And look, people get elevated to very, very high positions with no leadership training at all, right? I mean, that happens. I don't know if you've ever been in a big
Absolutely.
organization, but it happens.
Yeah, it is. It's surprising how often it does happen, actually, because there's so much talk around that, and it's not just something that's been talked about in the last 5 minutes. It's been talked about for forever, even when I first started in organisations and leadership roles. So again, what do organisations don't get in this? It's almost like sort of getting someone to walk into the operating theatre and just give them a scalpel and go for it when they've had no training. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. What are your thoughts? Like, where does this sit? Why are we so stupid?
Well, it's unbelievable. And look, while I was doing my research for this coaching practice, I'm in executive coaching. You know, 30% of executives that are pulled up from within a company fail within 18 to 24 months, 30 months, whatever. 65% that are brought in from outside fail, right? And the places they fail the most are change management, talent management, and strategic decision making, right? And those are all skills that by the time a person gets to that level, they should have some sort of competence, right, in that, or know the right questions to lean on their span of control, to get help or get an advisor. But I don't know. That's a mystery to answer why companies don't get it. And I mean, there's a lot of things at play when people are elevated to these type of positions. I mean, you and I and everybody else knows that. So
I'm really going to put you on the spot here, but if you could give people just a little bit of advice around if there was one thing that you believe would help those leaders who are having challenges around the change management, the talent management, and the strategic decision making, what would you say for each?
well, first thing I would say is get help. Asking for help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. No one's good at everything, right? Um, we all have three or four things that we do really well, and we have things that we're marginal at. So if you're a senior person and you're marginal at communication, um, when it comes to change management, well, maybe you want to have someone step in and help you lead that, or show you how to lead that change. right? Show you how to engage people genuinely and authentically, right? Because change management is nothing more than transparency and engagement, letting people know what is going on at the current moment, right? And engaging them on a consistent basis. I mean, look, we would have these initiatives, oil and gas contracts every 5 to 7 years, and every 24 months there's a reorganization in business units. So there's a lot of change. And sometimes, there's a change management initiative that goes along, with that. But some of these programs could last 8 or 9 months. And, one of them that I was a part of, like it would go 3 or 4 weeks on end with when we wouldn't find out anything. Like no one knew what was going on. And that one ended up pretty poor. Now I've been on the other side of that, where folks were very proactive in engaging, very transparent with what was going on, and that made people feel at ease, and therefore made their productivity better. Because let's face it, business is always changing, so we're always sort of in a change state. But when these significant events happen and people know their jobs are on the line, they need information, right? And what you want to do is preserve your operational capacity, right? Your effectiveness. And that's where the transparency and the engagement comes in. Now, strategic decision making, I'm a big process person when it comes to decisions, and in the big company I work for, Chevron, we had decision analysis. That helped. A lot of decisions are made on intuition, but it should be made on facts, right? So I like to be process driven. I recently published a small ebook on strategic decision making, the 8 steps, so folks can lean on that. And, as far as for talent management, there's studies out there. People don't leave for more money. People want to be recognized, and they want to be uh, acknowledged. They want to be treated how they want to be treated. You know, to me, that's the talent management is the easiest one. But it seems that with COVID and just maybe the last 10 years, like people are not staying at jobs more than 2 to 3 years. If that, which which is a little different from sort of back in the day where you know if you if you hired with a great company, there would be really no reason to leave because you had a job and you had some runway to excel. But now I think people just want something different, and I think the worker is starting to have more say, than the big companies. And I kind of like that because for too long people have not been recognized and treated how they should be treated.
Do you find, Bobby, in the States and the conversation you have, the clients you work with, or maybe don't work with, because are they looking for smart rather than simple? The reason I ask that is because what you've just talked about through each one of those, even just the simple approach of getting help, sometimes people don't know what they don't know, but getting help is a great starting point. It's simple. um, Change, transparency, and engagement. Actually, the actions require some work, but there's so much simplicity to that.
Hmm.
So, my question again is, do you find companies and business leaders are looking for something too smart rather than simple?
Oh, 100%. That tickles me. That statement tickles me. Nothing beats simple. Think about everything you do in your daily life, like driving your car, things around your house. They've been engineered for what? They've been engineered for simple. So why shouldn't work be that way? Now, granted, there can be a lot of complex things in work, but simple usually wins out. Even simple communication. You walk into a boardroom or a presentation. There's I mean, okay, everybody does PowerPoint. And there's like 20 bullets on one slide. Like, come on, man. So what I learned to put no more than 4 bullets on the slide, no more than 5 to 6 words per bullet. Simple. Go in there, know your material, and deliver it with simplicity, and talk like you're talking to sixth graders, and everything's probably going to go pretty good. But when we try to get smart, that's when things go sideways. Yeah, I mean, with AI, and every time you turn around, there's a new software program and all that. And look, all these things are tools. We all have toolboxes, so we should use those tools effectively. But like some people trying to use 20 tools at one time, right? Just make it simple. Simple, clear, and concise works all day.
How much of that approach has been impacted, guided by for you through, you mentioned martial arts. I don't remember, I didn't realize you were sort of involved in martial arts. I missed that one, but certainly the army side. So there's extreme discipline involved in those two practices.
Mhm.
Not that I've been firsthand involved in either of them, but how has that impacted you and your philosophy around being simple, keeping leadership simple, keeping business simple?
Well, again, people gravitate to simple. And the more complicated things are, people start checking out early, right? Because attention spans are real small. I think maybe a decade ago, it was, they said people had an attention span of nominally 7 seconds. And I think now it's down to 3 seconds, right? I heard that just maybe a month ago. So the more complicated things are, people start to switch off. It's been my experience. But as far as for the Marine Corps and martial arts, and everything else that takes discipline, discipline's a friend. It takes a while to learn what discipline really is. It's not going to the gym at the beginning of the year, then quitting after 2 weeks. I when I wrote my book, I had to really think deeply and critically. So I deconstructed discipline, in the way I see it. And, I think discipline starts with self trust, right? Trust is character and competence. I have to have a reason to trust myself. Either I do something really good, right? Or I have good character, or I have both. Now that applies to people that I trust and believe, right? But after self trust is self belief, right? Because now there's something to believe in, right? And then after that, we can commit, right? Because we're confident. We have trust, we believe, we commit, and then we select something, right? I'm going to go to the gym, right? I've made a plan. I have a course of action. I have a workout plan. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna show up, and I'm gonna get a little bit better every day. Part of this too is this worldwide struggle with delayed gratification, right? Like with, we live in the culture of now. You know, 15 years ago, you had to go to the store to buy small trinkets. Now you can go on Amazon. It's at your doorstep. In less than 18 hours. It's no different in business. Like all this, I think, is working on people's psyche, on society's psyche of now, now, now. And you know as well as I, just like cooking. You can get a TV dinner, put it in the microwave, 5 minutes, you'll be eating. But if you want a good meal, right, it's probably going to take about an hour or so to cook, right? It's no different in business. Things take time. Now, there's a lot of fanfare around, quote unquote scaling and 5 time and 10 time and all that stuff. And that's fine. There are people that are clever and they find shortcuts and God bless them. That's fine. But for the rest of the 98% of us, it takes time.
I love what you said about discipline is a friend. I've just written that down, and we'll probably get a card made up for you around that, mate, because that's a classic one. Self trust and also the character competence, because I know in my own work that I do, I'm very much focused on the the developing of character, the building of competence, and the
Mm.
creating of connection. That's sort of how I just simplify my leadership frameworks. What's character mean for you? What's wrapped up in character?
So I have to give credit to Stephen Covey. This is one thing I had to really research too when I was writing the book, and and when I say research, I have to go back in my own mind and kind of mill around. And so in Stephen Covey's book, The Speed of
Amazing what we forget about in our own experiences, isn't it? Like, you've
Oh,
really got to deliberately sit down and reflect on things and think, geez, I forgot about that happening and what I learned from it.
let me tell you what, you know, I never thought I would write a book, but when as I got into it, it became this wonderful thing. And the thing that was wonderful about it, it was therapeutic because I had to go all the way back. I mean, really to childhood, when I was writing this book and replay everything and try to remember stuff. And that was challenging. But after time, things started, coming back. Um, but trust, is one part character, one part competence. I align with Stephen Covey on that. We grow our competence by doing things well, and our character is, our attributes. justice, judgment, dependability, decisiveness, courage, enthusiasm. We have to work on these things, every day to get better because, again, these things are perishable. And if we don't work on them, and, then we're not going to have good character.
When you've gone back and reflected on these scenarios, these experiences and stuff, did anything come true around, or did anything sort of raise in your mind about where you've really found it challenging to stay aligned and be aligned with your own values and your own sort of personal attributes and character?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Our values are always going to come into question. We're always going to be at some point we're going to get pitted. Like my values are, uh, respect yourself and others, believe in yourself, hard work, family, and simplicity. Right. So I'm very sensitive about those five core values. I mean, there's hundreds of values, right? We can only live, 3 to 5 at a time. So I'm very sensitive to that. So I try to remain self-aware. I try to limit influence. I'm impressionable. I listen. I'm open-minded, but I'm at the same time a little guarded, right? So in those situations, you just have to make the decision. Are my values more important, or is go along, get along more important? It's as simple as that. Um, but I haven't been perfect, over my life. I don't want to pretend to anyone that I have. But I've stayed close to my values. I have.
Yeah, well done, mate. You're definitely not the first person that's been on the podcast that says they're not perfect. So that's good because that means we picked the right people. If there's anybody that comes on this show and says they're perfect, then I think we should just end the episode there and then.
Yeah, for sure. I dedicated one whole chapter in the book to perfect, chapter 10. So you want a little lesson on perfect, go read chapter 10. Nothing's perfect.
Nothing is perfect. I do struggle with it from time to time because I do have again, I guess the preparation that we've sent you in being prepared for this show, that just making sure we've got these little things in place, and can sometimes overthink things and whatever. But I just have to, again, be self-aware, bring it back and say, hey, it doesn't matter. This is good enough for now. May not be perfect because what is perfect, but just get stuff out there, keep moving forward. That's the key.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a recovering perfectionist, right? It started my childhood. My mother was a perfectionist, so it wore off, and that's why I was well prepared for the Marine Corps. Like my uniform was always
Mm,
perfect, because like
mm,
things in my house had to be perfect. My mom vacuumed twice a day. You never saw dust on anything, right? So
wow.
yeah, but I came to the conclusion when I got over being perfect, when I realized that I wasn't perfect, that striving for excellence, is better than striving for perfection. And that's one thing I like to give junior leaders is permission to be excellent and not perfect, right? And that is it's a mind shift for some people because they may have grew up in a perfect household as well, and those things carry on through life when you start. It's another thing I realized when I was writing the book that there were certain patterns, um, patterns of behavior and patterns of other things throughout life. When you drill down and you trace it back honestly, it came from adolescence or some at some spot growing up.
Was there anything significant there that you trace back, again, back to these reflections that has sort of made you the leader you are today?
Well, man, I got to credit my parents. Both strong people, both had big hearts, and worked extremely hard. So the example was there. 24/7. My father used to work away overseas with Brown and Root. My mom would be home at 8 or 9 months at a time, and we had a 2 acre yard, and she would push mow it. You know, and as soon as we could, walk behind it, we helped her, do that. So we're always, working hard and doing stuff like that, and some people frown on hard work like it's beneath them, but there's so much to be found in hard work and so much to be found in discipline. You know, I wish people could see those different, really, because I think it would make them better leaders. Better leaders of their family, but leaders of themselves first, obviously. That's what this is all about, leading self first. But then when you start leading others, you need that discipline, you need those character attributes. You have to set the example. You don't get a day off, right? There's a heavy weight uh, in being responsible for others and accountable to others and serving others, the best you can. That's a heavy weight. People shouldn't take that for granted when they have that privilege, to lead other people.
You mentioned hard work and discipline, and I think I heard you say that how they should be treated different. Tell me more about that, and then how are they linked?
Yeah, no, I don't believe I said they should be treated different. I think people should see them a little differently, right? Not as these hard things, right? People shouldn't see hard work as hard work. They should see it as opportunity, right? Because underneath the facade of hard work is growth, character building, resilience, right? And discipline. You know, Once you truly develop the capacity to have discipline in things, I hate to use this phrase because everyone uses it. But it's a game changer. It's a total mind shift. You know, and look, you're not going to be uber disciplined at every single thing in your life. There are probably only 4 or 5 of those people walking around. But the important things in your life you can pick, and you can go back to your self trust, your self belief, and your level of commitment and desire for that thing, and be disciplined. It's a gift, and like it's free. Like you don't have to buy it. It's something you can do yourself. So that's why it's a little perplexing why most folks don't gravitate to discipline a little bit more. I guess naturally, people just like to do what they want to do, and I mean that's fine. But you shouldn't complain when they don't get something because they weren't disciplined, because they owned it.
I know that the States is obviously a very, very big country with a large amount of people, 360 million odd or something.
Yeah.
What what do you see as the greatest challenges around leadership and for leaders in your country from an organizational context perspective?
Yeah, I'd say from an organizational context, again, even in the big company I worked for, we had leadership programs that were, 3 or 4 days. And then after that, for the rest of the career, you just went about your business. But that's not enough. Leadership is something that has to be continuously taught, in a structured manner, and then it has to be executed. One of the first things I read, and the first business book I ever had, was by Joe Montana. He's a quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, played American football, sport, a couple decades ago. And in his book, he said, repetition is king. And the first business book I ever read, I never forgot those words: repetition is king. Um, we need to do a better job of teaching leadership, starting in high school, in college, right? There are business courses in college, but why not leadership courses? Come on. What is business? Sure, it's money, but guess what? It's people and zeros, right? And how do you contribute through others? It's leadership. How do you show up? Self leadership. But absolutely none of that is taught. So I think that's where we need to start. And that's kind of what Stronger You is about. Shamelessly sort of plug myself there, but that's the gap that we want to fill.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the shameless plug, mate, because I'm with you 100%, and I would just have to ditto those comments for Australia and probably every other country in the world. What I don't know why that is. I mean, obviously, if we did, I guess that's the silver bullet. But is it just it's not accounting. It's not black and white. It's not
Right.
medical. Not that medical's always black and white, but like where does the difficulty sit? Because I think you and I are pretty aligned as far as simple works. Simple is the way to go. It's easy to implement. It's less confronting for people, and leadership can be simple. But I don't know. There's tons of podcasts like this one around. There's tons of businesses like ours around. There's tons of books like what you've done and others have created. Like,
Well,
what is going on?
I can give you two words: hard and desire. The first one, you're right, leadership is simple, but it's damn hard. It's hella hard. Okay. Even on the easiest of days, leadership is hard. Um, and I guess just most people don't want hard. They want the path of least resistance. And the second one, desire. You can have everything else, but you don't have a desire to get up the hill. You know, just stop. If you don't have that desire, to me, the leaders that I admired, I always saw some form of desire, right? A desire to get better, desire to treat people better, desire to communicate, just a desire to come to work, and contribute through others, in the most constructive way, they can. Now, we're all big people here. We know that work sometimes gets messy. That's why I call it work in business and, not a party. But more often than not, those good leaders have a lot of desire and they approach everything, in a really constructive, you know. But I think that's it. It's hard, and folks just don't have a desire to do it. But look, you know, so the other side of that, we're asking ourselves, why don't people do it? But let's look at the result if it's done poorly, right? So poor executives, poor CEOs, poor founders, whatever, poor team leader. You've got talent turnover, you got bad decisions being made, can't lead through change, can't get out of a paper bag. That costs money. That's real. And that's why some people fail in 18 to 30 months.
In your own journey, mate, and extensive it is, military, again, the martial arts side, and then the corporate gigs you've had and the travel and countries and all those sorts of things. Is there a moment that stands out for you where you've been most satisfied as a leader, where you've been most proud as a leader?
Well, I think I'm retired now. What gave me the most confidence is, I have to say, when you've created another leader, right? And you see that person, sort of jump out of their nest and spread their wings, and you see them succeed. I mean, that's an awesome moment of, for me, it's a moment of pride. Take stock in that you've invested, into this person that had the desire. You sort of fill their cup. And I guess, leading teams through difficult circumstances. So like desert storm, stuff like that. Stuff in the oil field. COVID. We were in this business unit in Africa, and our budget was cut in half, and our management still had the same expectations. So, we had a big task ahead of us in 2020, 2021, whenever that was. But for a couple of years, man, it was tough. But, we were decimated talent wise. They cut half our staff, got our budget, but we're able to stem the tide, and we built back our personnel and eventually recovered our budget when things improved, in the oil field. But that was an immense, source of pride there to make it through that. That to me gave me a lot of confidence. So I was glad to retire, on a win.
And off the back of that, mate, again, worked and lived and um, engaged with many people in many different countries through your careers. Are there some universal principles around leadership that you've seen works irrespective of geographical boundaries?
Yeah, the number one is respect. Respect is universal, and everyone wants respect. But there's this thing in different countries about the way to deliver feedback, right? Because take China, the Middle East, the Far East, very top down, very hierarchical. You don't jump rungs on the ladder. In Chevron, I could go talk to a VP or someone else like it was laissez faire, right? But in these other countries, you definitely would not do that. as an individual contributor in an organization. And also, as a Westerner working in these places, the first thing you want to do there is figure out the local culture and norms, right? Because probably your first 90 to 100 days is critical. And it's when you try to, build your influence, show respect, get respect back. But in a lot of those cultures, they don't take kindly to public criticism, right? Whether it's constructive or not. So you kind of have to know how to handle that. It's a slippery slope, because at the end of the day, feedback should be open, honest, and direct. But some folks are sensitive, so we just need to be aware of that.
Yeah, it's where the nuance comes in, doesn't it? And back to that
Yes.
trust, which underpins the quality of the relationship. So if that's not there, even the guess what we could determine as good feedback, the praising type of feedback can be taken the wrong way. Have you experienced that in your time?
Where I've praised someone and they didn't like it.
Or even if where it's happened, yeah, either directly or you've just seen it within organisations you've been in.
Yeah, normally if I praise someone, they're as long as it was genuine, which I praise when it's appropriate. Not I don't go around praising up and down the corridor every day. But normally it's received very well.
It goes back to a word you mentioned earlier, intent.
Mm.
How critical is not only just in feedback, but how critical is this word intent for leaders and their approach?
Yeah, yeah, another great question. Yeah, I went back to college when I was 47 and graduated when I was 51. So it took me 4 years, to get through that. And I chose intelligence and international relations because it was really interesting subject that's very interesting to me. And one of the things about intelligence is capability and intent. So the enemy or the company or a person, they have a certain capability, right? A person has certain training, they go to a certain university, they had these jobs. That person is capable of X skills. Same thing with a company. Company has this type of equipment, these type of people, they're geographically positioned. They have a certain capability. But what's hard to detect or know is intent, right? Because intent is everything. Like with leadership, if someone's giving me feedback, I don't mind if they're direct, but you better be coming with the intent to improve me, right? Not to admonish me or demean me or anything like that, because that's not acceptable as a professional. And I know that happens a lot, and that's unfortunate. But that would be something that I would never, sort of, stomach. So the way to influence is not hard. It's understanding people, but it's also informing people and acting and behaving with the intent to improve, right? When people know that your tone and intent are to improve, more often than not, they're going to take the feedback, right? And it's their feedback to take. They take it on board and they'll implement what they believe, is going to fit into their world. We can't make people do things. We can penalize people if we want them to genuinely take the feedback on. We have to be simple, precise. We have to give examples. And again, I'll finish off with tone and intent.
Back to school at 47, mate.
Yeah.
I have to ask the question because I'm sure a lot of people are thinking it. Why the hell did you do that?
Well, okay, here's a quirk. I'll let everybody know. Like, if I start something, I have to finish, right? So I started in martial arts when I was in high school. I went to
Mm.
college, played football, then went to the Marine Corps. I was going to get back into martial arts when I was in Okinawa, but we're always in the field and stuff like that. So when I hired with Chevron, I was in Mississippi and I was 32, or no, 35. And I went back for my black belt and I finished. And I eventually got up to second degree black belt, before I got, a little too old and started getting too many injuries, but I finished. Now, my mom always wanted me to go to college. And, I washed out and I know that, kind of hurt her. And, I went into the Marine Corps and stuff like that. So I said, okay, I'm going to finish. So I had to. And, the third thing, I started playing guitar when I was in high school as well and broke my fingers in football. So I didn't finish that. So now in semi-retirement, that's another thing that I'm going to finish. So, if you see me in another year or so, maybe I can, play something for you. But I'm big on finishing, if it's under my skin, if it's in my heart, I've got to finish it. Right.
Yeah, well, there's that discipline. Whether
Yeah.
there's sort of decades between them, and it doesn't necessarily matter, but you're committed to something that's, as you say, is in your heart. That's a big thing.
Well, it's desire. It's good. It's
Yeah.
back to desire. Like I don't desire, everything or many things, but the things I desire, it's white hot, right? And that's why, I had to go back. I mean, look, I did homework at lunch, in a restroom, on planes, in China, in Africa, you know, on the bus to work, you know, and yeah, I'd tell people to go for it. If you've got a burning desire, take that first step. You know, learn to trust yourself, learn to believe in yourself. You'll be surprised what you can do.
How does that returning to school and finishing something that you felt was unfinished previously tap into your thinking, which again, I'm very much aligned to this journey of leadership being a never ending journey?
Yeah, no, I was, finishing that. Like, look, you know, intelligence is a discipline where you write. Okay. And they don't allow drivel, if you know what I mean. So you have to write cogent. Everything has to be on point. Everything has to be cited, perfectly. And, that was just such a great experience. And actually, I didn't know, but it prepared me to write my book because I was so disciplined writing. I was always writing 2 or 3 papers at one time for 4 years straight. Right. So when it came to write the book, it was nothing to write 300 or 400 words per day, for about 6 months. Ended up with about 36,000 words, right? It's about 175 pages.
Mm.
But yeah, everything plays off, everything you do in life plays off one another, right? Like, even failures and successes. Finishing boot camp was big. Finishing Marine combat training was big. Finishing jungle environment survival training was huge. So finishing black belt, for me was huge because you finished. You did what you said you're going to do. You made yourself a promise. And I guess that's the thing, we have to keep our promises to ourselves. And like, there's certain ones that I can't live with myself unless I finish. If I make the promise to myself, I have to do it. I have to. There's no, there's no other choice, like in my mind.
Staying with the school theme, did it change this additional education that you finished? Did it change your views on leadership or any thinking around leadership? If it did, what did it change?
Well, we've covered capability and intent, so I'll sort of leave that there. But the third thing I learned about was, I guess, two other things. Open source information. 85% of all information is out there for everyone to have. The 10% special people know or they pay for, and 5% we'll never see. It's behind some closed door anywhere. So, information is power for a leader, right? It's knowledge. After that, I would say recognizing patterns, right? So in life, we see patterns naturally, but when you look at it through the lens of intelligence and pattern recognition, pattern of life, pattern of how companies behave, business intelligence, it's a mind shift, and it made me a better coach when I learned to look at people's patterns very critically. you know, I could poach out small things that could help them, right? So when we'd have our feedback sessions, we could give them that open, honest, and direct feedback. And people like you can negotiate one-offs. Okay, that happened. Whatever. Like if someone does something 10 times, and you have 10 things written down, right, and you can cite those very specifically, it's kind of hard for them to argue against that. Now, you take that information, you deliver it, in a constructive way, and say, "Hey, there's an opportunity here. You know, this is what are you?" There's 3 things you ask, right, in a coaching session. How does this behavior affect you? How does it affect the team or organization? Or how does it affect you? How does it affect the team? How does it affect the organization and mission or business plan? Right? And so those three questions coupled with the specific facts, people always come to the conclusion themselves what they need to do to improve. So that way you're not telling them, hey, you need to go do this. Like, because people don't like to be told what to do. So you might think it's a clever way of doing it, but for me, it's just a process that takes a little bit of work, but the output is very constructive. And, again, people are more likely to solve their own, performance or behavior problems when it's presented to them in that manner, right? Asking the open-ended question versus, the close-ended, the yes or no, or saying, hey, you fell short. Don't do that again, do this. No one likes it.
Yeah, spot on. I'm just interested in the patterns side. What patterns are you seeing in leadership that concern you?
Well, I would say people don't stay in a position, they either don't stay long enough or they stay too long. Right. Like 18 or 24 months is not long enough. Right. You spend 6 months figuring out, where you are and what to do. And the next 9 to 10 months figuring out the next assignment. And then the person who comes behind that person is trying to clean up behind the person who just left. Or, you've got someone who's been there 30 years and they kind of become a sacred cow. Right. So no one can tell them anything. They know everything. They won't listen to anybody. So there should be some lean level for every sort of leadership position. I mean, we have it in politics, 4 years for president, or, 6 years for senator, whatever that is. But, corporations could take that same model, not necessarily the same numbers, but, it's good to have new blood coming through and new thoughts and stuff like that. So I would say, yeah, people are not staying long enough or staying too long. Or, obviously, we talked about this at the outset, just, the wrong person, in those positions.
Yeah, some would say 4 and 6 years is too long for political people as well, mate, particularly if there's someone that you're not really liking in that position.
Yeah, so
But I get your
I don't
point.
want to get into politics here. It's a whole nother discussion.
Particularly American politics, mate. Let's leave that. We've got
Oh,
our own
come on,
challenges in
man.
Australia. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, you guys just must love the news.
Well, unfortunately, Australia's been a reasonable part of the news of late, at least from what I understand, with all the stuff happening in the Middle East, which is absolutely terrible. But
Yeah,
I guess it take. Well, I guess it takes me on to just to thinking about again your time in the military and fighting in the Gulf War and those sort of experiences as well. How is that? How did that shape your leadership thinking? Those experiences into what you're doing now and your approach to people.
yeah. I believe in war. You see the best and worst leadership, because of the potential for high pressure and sort of. I mean, the whole thing about war is kind of zero sum, right? It's supposed to be a winner and a loser, which in some of these conflicts there's never either. But sort of business time, and it's time to put your training to the test. In acute stress, it tends to test people's appetite for keeping their emotions together. So that's one of the first lessons I learned in Desert Storm. And I saw good men abandon other men, right? And that was, man, that was profound for me, because I was always taught from a young age, if you're the leader, you're sort of responsible. And then when I joined the Marine Corps, like, people's lives are could potentially, count on your decisions and your emotions and how you conduct yourself. And to see someone do that, to totally lose it and, you know, basically openly state that, look, I just want to go home. I don't care about all of you. That was, that was something I'll never forget. And it was a hard lesson learned.
Yeah, look, I haven't had any first-hand involvement in that, and I don't intend to in the future, hopefully. But certainly knowing some people
Sure.
and generations in our family as well, like many others. But it's just so hard from an outsider looking in, mate. And I'm interested in your perspective on this. But there seems to be so much. We've got a situation in Australia that's been playing out over several years. A guy who won the um, sort of one of the I think the highest honour for his service in the Gulf War, Australian soldier Ben Robert Smith. And I'm not saying I sit either way on this, but what I can appreciate is that he's been judged, and I think there's been an outcome where he's got some level of response that he has to take to these accusations and everything like that. But I'm not making excuses for whatever, and I don't know. But when you're in these high pressure situations, it's the extreme behavior under pressure and the nuance around that. Like, it's easy to sit back from an outsider. Well, this is the decision I would have made. But hell, when you're in a position like that, I mean, it's split second stuff, life or death. Like, what do? You must have seen that sort of stuff on the ground. I think that's what you're alluding to with people. Just it sort of smacks you in the face.
War's probably the most imperfect type of operation. No matter how many have been fought, no matter how much you study it, it's never perfect. There's just so many variables. The pressure can be, ungodly. Now, I was in Desert Storm for 30 days, right? So you know, most people in the last couple of decades, that served any amount of time, they probably have years, in theater in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, I don't have that experience, but some of the stuff that I saw was very profound, and you know, it wasn't as intense as some of the stuff in the global war on terror, but intense enough to see people definitely lose it. And You know, I wrote an article on LinkedIn last week about a tale of two leaders, and one was about a sergeant that we had in the Gulf War, and one was about a maintenance manager at one of the plants I worked at. And you know, I realize, in like you rightly said, in retrospect, after the fact, that person was only human. Um, but at the same time, in the throes of war, to have someone give up on 30 men. Uh, for me, that was unforgivable. From a leadership standpoint, and I didn't, think any less of them as a human or anything like that. But I mean, look, it's what you signed up for, you know. And yeah, a lot of decisions are made out there on the battlefield in a split second, and we don't know what those people are dealing with. You know, like I think even when uh, people or whoever research, you know just say crime scenes or an accident, something happens, like even firsthand accounts can be wrong, right? Because there's so much trauma, right? um yeah, it's difficult, and I would never judge someone who did something in war that I was not a part of or I didn't have good information on. I think we had a guy in the United States that was accused of some stuff like that, and at no time did I pass judgment either way, because you know what, I wasn't there. And I'm not going to go by what I hear in the media or magazine or online or anything. I'm not going to play into that, because I know better. Been sort of been there. Not exactly where that guy was, but never
Yeah, I'm with you,
judged.
mate. That's
Never
the
judged at
wisest
all.
approach, isn't it?
It's ugly.
Yeah,
It's an ugly
absolutely.
type of thing.
Mm. One thing I do know for sure, I can only speak from an Australian perspective. I don't know what it's like in the States, but again, through some close friends who do some work in this space, we just need to support our veterans better, particularly after service or even if they're in service and coming back from active service. There's definitely not enough help from a mental health and well-being perspective in that regards. I don't know how that sits in the States.
Man, 100%. We're failing bad. We're failing really bad. And I'll just say my hairy scary goal is, so we have a hospital here in the United States. The name of it is St. Jude's, and it's a cancer hospital for children. And everyone goes there, cost free. Doesn't cost them anything. The family goes there, the child goes there, and they get treated, and a lot of them recover. And I would like to build something like that for veterans in the United States, because our process now is it's not working. It's just not working. Um, and I've researched this. I'm just talking off the cuff. The first thing they try to do is, give people pills, right, or diagnose them with some, mental condition, and pills lead to drinking, drinking leads to violence, and other kind of drugs. And, before you know it, someone who had a stellar career now can't, get out of bed and cope. Now, the veterans are not broken, right? There's a missing piece. There's a transition piece, that's missing because you go from civilian to highly disciplined, highly regimented. You have this awesome support system, whether the military machine works really well in certain spots, okay, it's up for grabs, but you do have a support system. And then the minute you walk off base, guess what? You have almost absolutely nothing. I know when I separated, I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. I was honorably discharged, but there was absolutely nothing when I got out. You could go to the VA, and I went there one time, and that's the Veterans Administration, and I never went back. To be honest, it just soured me. But yeah, I agree 100%. We need to take care of these people that served, man, especially in this global war on terror. Like I know one person was part of Rubicon at one time. I mean, he had 13 combat missions, and spent like 20 years in the
Wow.
Rangers, so, people like that need some help transitioning. And, we have the wherewithal that, that's, like if we didn't have solutions or wherewithal or means, that would be one thing. But we have all that. Australia has that. United States definitely has it. But we're not doing it. And it pains me. You know, like I said, my dad was a World War II, Korea, and Vietnam War veteran, Vietnam 3 times, and I saw him, quote unquote, suffer in silence. A lot. And I really didn't know what was going on. He didn't talk about it much, and therefore I didn't ask. But now having been through the military and being older and wiser, I know what kind of suffering he was going through. For someone to give so much, he spent 32 years in the military, and to have to live out your life like that is not how it should be. I think we're better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And very good friends of the podcast of mine and personal friends. Karen says freedom is not free. Her husband is an ex-veteran, and they do
Yeah,
a lot of work in that space.
for
And
sure.
yeah, it's all I can do, whether it's 30 days or 30 years, mate, as a normal person just outside of this thing, is just thank you for your service and what you do, because as she says, freedom is not free. There's a big price to be paid for it.
Yeah, for sure.
Mate, what is one thing that has helped you become a more confident leader?
Yeah, I'd have to say creating other leaders and leading teams through difficult circumstances. Granted, confidence building is a continuous process. So I think maybe to sum all that up, accomplishment, experience and accomplishment, would be the thing that gave me the most confidence. Aside from building those leaders. And experience and accomplishment are confidence's best friends, right? Go get that experience, go accomplish something, set some small goals, make a bigger goal, and then go for a big goal, right? There's a lot to be learned about incremental advancement, right? So I think before this podcast, I sent you a graphic of this the leader's journey that I teach, and basically starts at the bottom of the mountain with desire and a call to adventure, and then eventually you're up there. You've got success, and but you got to work hard. Once you're there, because it gets hard. There's headwinds, people trying to knock you off your spot, stuff like that. But the thing about it is, we can't continuously um, look at the top of the mountain and say, "Man, I want to be there. I want to be there. I want to be there." No, we've got to break that big goal down into maybe 15 sub goals, and we got to hit one at a time, one at a time. Then each day we wake up, we got to hit that one goal in front of us. And if people would just, come to grips with delayed gratification, they could get there. But, they hit their first couple wickets and man, it gets hard. And guess what? That desire gets tested. And they find out that, well, I just didn't have the desire for that. I wanted it, but I didn't have the desire to take the actions necessary, to get up that mountain.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And if you've got that desire, momentum, as you're sort of alluding to, is that powerful thing to keep things moving, isn't it? So, and we will, for our watchers on YouTube, we'll put that image up on the screen so people can see that as well. So it certainly made a lot of sense to me. Mate, you've obviously had a big impact pre-retirement. For some reason, I feel like you may have an even greater impact in retirement with the work that you're doing and the opportunities you give. So well done on your work, mate. I really appreciate your time to come on our show today and talk and share your knowledge and experience. What you've lived over the time is varied and hugely valuable for the people you'll help in the future. Thanks for being a fantastic guest on The Culture of Leadership.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brendan. I really appreciate it, buddy.
Been a pleasure. Nothing's perfect, including leadership. So leaders shouldn't lose confidence because of one or two bad performances. Dust yourself off and keep going. These are my 3 key takeaways from my conversation with Bobby. My first key takeaway: confident leaders get help. Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. They understand their limitations and seek out the expertise of others. This approach broadens their own skill set and builds mutual respect. Mentorship, networking, and continuous learning are all ways to get help. My second key takeaway: confident leaders embrace failure. They aren't deterred by failure, but see it as a learning opportunity. With the right mindset, failure serves as a tool for growth and self-improvement. By accepting and analysing setbacks, confident leaders can refine their strategies, strengthen their resolve, and ultimately pave the way for future successes. My third key takeaway: confident leaders keep it simple. It's how they stand out in a world dominated by complexity, distilling processes and strategies down to their simplest form. Leads to more focused efforts, better communication, and ultimately better results. So in summary, my 3 key takeaways were: confident leaders get help, confident leaders embrace failure, and confident leaders keep it simple. You can let me know your thoughts on YouTube or at thecultureofleadership.com. Thanks for joining me, and remember, the best outcome is on the other side of a genuine conversation.